shifting to something different was really good for me to be able to be home and also to kind of stretch my boundaries. Like I said, like if you're not taking risks, then you're not growing. So I was able to do that. And that was awesome. But I had the luxury of not being in a position where I had to find something immediately. So I was looking sort of passively over a period of time, and I saw this posting on LinkedIn for this job at Peloton, and I was immediately like, I want that. The job description just fits so many criteria, which maybe now we won't, but we could go in a direction where we talk about why don't women apply for jobs that unless they're like 100% qualified for them. It was like the unicorn job where I was like, I can check all those boxes.
Well, hello, welcome back to Athena Talks. And today we get to not only share the table with one tremendous trial attorney and litigator, but two. We've got Stephanie Niehaus, who was a former big law trial attorney and litigator at Squire Patton Boggs, turned law firm owner and general counsel, to marching her way up the ranks to Peloton Interactive, where she is leading the litigation and investigations team. We also have the wonderful and remarkable Meghan Quinn, who is a fabulous trial attorney and litigator out of Squire Patton Boggs, Washington, D.C. office, where I've had the pleasure of getting to work on her teams since about 2016 and observe how she leads and litigates complex multi-district litigation, class actions, government investigations. I mean, she does it all with brilliance and grace. And what is excellent and so exciting about talking to these wonderful professionals is that they share a common bond in mentorship. And part of what we want to lead off talking about today is mentorship and how important mentorship is on your professional journey. I know for me, when I transitioned to private practice in 2016, coming from the Marine Corps, which is historically known to be a pretty male-dominated world, coming into private practice, not knowing what to expect, and bam, right there in front of me was Stephanie, and I had the honor of being assigned to one of the complex trial teams that she was leading, and immediately I recognized that Stephanie was the absolute whole package. I mean, not just as a lawyer, trial attorney, and litigator, but as a leader. And what she inspired in me was leading really hard, high-stress, complex matters with just compassion and patience, two traits that I still haven't necessarily acquired. But she brought those to the team. And I think what's important when you're on a mentorship journey is sometimes the mentors actually get to have feedback on how they've impacted lives and professional journeys. And that was the impact you've had on me, Stephanie. But I know Meghan shares a similar example. So I just want to turn it over to Meghan to talk about her mentorship journey alongside you.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Stephanie, I had the pleasure of being mentored by Stephanie as a junior to mid-level associate. Still miss her and still wish she would come back to us. But it was really kind of the first situation for me where a partner got to know me on a personal level and would also really get in the weeds with me on the issues, and wouldn't just kind of scratch the surface. So I'm wondering, Stephanie, if you have a mentorship, what is your strategy or what is your perspective on being a good mentor?
Well, I mean, do I have to start talking? You guys should keep going. No, thank you guys.
With the start of the show. I'm just helping with questions here for the record.
Well, it was such a pleasure working with both of you. I miss you both as well as many other people at the firm. And you both made it very easy for me to lead that team that we worked on. So thank you. And thanks for your kind words. I think I'm fortunate to have had some really solid mentors myself. And so some of it's just good modeling for me. I can think of a couple of partners, probably more than a couple of partners, but there was a very strong female partner who I looked up to as a mentor at the firm. Tried my first case with her, and I really learned a ton from her. I don't know if you guys remember Laura Hong, but she still stands out as a primary mentor for me. She's at a different firm now, and we do keep in touch. And kind of what Meghan described. I mean, we really connected on a personal level, which I think is helpful and important. And I do like to get to know people in general. So I don't think you can take that part out of the mentorship equation. But she also, I think when she saw that I was capable of doing something, she let me run with it, and she gave me a lot of opportunity. And, I think that is something I really tried to do as well when I've worked with people who are a little bit more junior. As my parents used to say, we give you enough rope to hang yourself with. I don't know if that's still like a PC thing to say, but like, but I think having a safe place to take risks and fail. Like if you're not failing occasionally, you're not stretching yourself. And, I think that was the environment that Laura kind of created. And then, in my own family, both of my parents, I think it's like, that's a slightly different thing, but, I've taken a lot of lessons from them as well. So, and then I guess, picking good people to mentor.
Well, thanks. And I definitely learned a lot from you. I remember one of the things that you had said to me when I worked with you, and then also again more recently, was that you would never ask someone on your team to do something you wouldn't do yourself, which I think can be rare in the legal field, and is very much appreciated, and is something that I try to, practice in my mentorship of more junior associates. So thank you for teaching us all. And just to provide some context on Stephanie and my relationship, we went to trial together almost 10 years ago now, I think. It was in Ohio, and it was about 6 or 7 week trial, I think. And Stephanie and I would go to yoga every weekend. I think it was every Sunday. It was kind of the only break we had all week to kind of keep us sane. And and it helped keep me sane. So thank you. You were, I think, the one who got me there, and is something, self-care is really important in this field. And I'm curious, as you've transitioned to Peloton, which I think is a place that probably has a much more health-focused atmosphere than a law firm, has it been easier to maintain some sanity in that regard, and some self-care and balance in that regard? Or how is that different from the law firm?
I think we also went and got our nails done. Speaking of self-care, one time we walked over someplace and to get our nails done. So yeah, I do think it's to take those moments. They're easier at different points and stages in your life than they are at others. I think in addition to being in an environment now where, obviously the company's focus is making people healthier, and encouraging fitness, and wellness. In addition to that, I think I'm at a point in my personal life where my children are of a certain age, that, I have a little bit more free time, so to speak. But yeah, I have loved getting really into the different offerings that Peloton has. I'm much better now about doing strength workouts, for example, than I was before, because they are so accessible. I have the tread. I've always run. You mentioned yoga. I don't know if this was something we have talked about before, but I actually got my yoga teaching certification a couple years ago, and so I taught yoga for a year before COVID interrupted that career path. But yeah, health and wellness has always been important, and I think maybe I'm just sort of an example of what we want at Peloton, but I find that the product makes fitness very accessible. So although I joke because I'm in the office 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which is much different than what I was doing before, which was fully remote. And actually one of the reasons I wanted to transition back into a different environment was just to be more active. But on the days Monday, Friday, I'm at home. And on the days I'm at home, I think I get like 4,000 steps unless I force myself to go do something. on the days I'm in the office, I'm up like 12,000, 15,000 steps because I'm commuting and then I'm up and down meeting with people. And so it's I didn't realize that my fitness level working for a fitness company would improve, not doing the actual fitness work, but just running. Yes. But however you get it in is how you get it in, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, but while we're on the topic, though, I do need to make just like a plug for the Peloton app. I've been a Peloton member for a long time now, and it started with the bike, and just so grateful for like all those busy professionals that are out there, like trying to figure out how to squeeze it in and just don't know. The app is just, it goes with me everywhere. And for somebody that travels a lot, like it's just right there on my phone. You can throw my headphones on. And you mentioned the Strength app. That Strength app, I'm so grateful for the Strength app, and that you brought it online and you didn't add a cost to it. Like it just came with the membership that we already have. And what's brilliant about the Strength app is like, I like to lift more than the cardio stuff, is you can go in the gym, especially when you travel, and sometimes you have the crappy hotel gyms, and you can turn it into just very hard, intense workout. And if you only have 10 minutes, you filter it for 10 minutes. But if you want 45 minutes, you can filter it for 45 minutes. And you just got, I call it cracking my ears, because you can just put it on, like be present and go through a workout. So I think, like I've always been a huge fan, but adding that Strength app has really been a life-changing piece for me, my wellness journey, especially keeping it on the road. But,
do you have a favorite? Do you still do spinning, Stephanie?
Well, I mean, that's been replaced by Peloton now, right? So, like indoor cycling fan for a company that will not be named.
We went to a class at an unnamed competitor before COVID, if you recall. But I was wondering if you had a favorite Peloton instructor, and if you don't, we can edit this out.
Oh my gosh! I mean, so I actually, I had the bike at my husband's house when we got married and combined households. The bike had to go because we didn't have enough space. So I will ride the bike at work every now and again, but I have the tread. So in terms of favorite instructors, I mean, I think I more have favorite class formats, and I'm really drawn to the music more than anything else. So like Rebecca Kennedy did the Stevie Nicks hike, and I mean, it could have been anybody doing the Stevie Nicks. I mean, she made it fantastic because she's fantastic, but like, sign me up, right? Like, I'm happy to wear a Stevie Nicks and I'm hiking up a treadmill. Like, I'm there. But I do like her a lot. They're all really great. I mean, it kind of just depends on what mood you're in. If whatever mood you're in, there's somebody for that mood, right? Like, do you guys have favorites? Do you guys have favorites?
So for me, I have a Peloton bike. I need to get back into it any day now. I'm going to start. So it's been a couple years for me since I've really done it. Maybe, after having kids, since you mentored me, as you know, I've had kids, so that's been a different journey, but, any day now I'm going to be getting back into it. So I can't speak to it now, but next time we talk, I'll have done it.
I mean, mine's totally mood dependent, because you can do that. It's like, how am I feeling today? Like, do I need like the high tempo? Like, so I really go off of like the music, and all the instructors are great. Some are more humorous than like they just all bring like their different personalities. So it's like, what music and like what do I want in my ears today, as opposed to a specific one, for sure. But you're sitting at Peloton now, but you had an incredible, I guess you could say, like non-linear legal journey to get to there. So I think what's really interesting about your journey, and so many people, like the legal profession is really hard, right? It's high stress. Sometimes it could just seem very repetitive, but you sat there, what was it, like 17, you're at your 17-year mark at Squire?
I think it was almost 18 years. Yeah. 2002 it was almost 18 years. Yeah.
And you're like, okay, it's time to make a change. Like, how did you do that? How did you go about that? What did that look like? And then how did that change how just you approach the legal profession in general and just, like the practice? How did the practice change?
I mean, I think, if you're 18 years at a place or almost 18 years, even within that time period, things change, right? So it wasn't the same career. And, there was certainly growth and progression over the 18 years at Squire. And I'm thankful for that and the opportunities I had there. That when I left Squire, I joined a boutique practice. I mean, it was just two of us for a period of time. I had been introduced through one of our former colleagues who had gone in-house to an attorney in New York that represented her in some of her cases. And he had left Big Law and he wanted to focus on the development the implications of developing automotive technologies like AI and automated driving functions. And what does that do to the liability analysis for primarily automotive insurers? That was his client base. And he was looking for somebody who had, a strong torts background, strong litigation background, class action experience, because in order to kind of keep the lights on while we were doing this new practice area, we were still doing your, complex insurance litigation, and which was challenging in a very small firm. I was used to having all these resources around me, and suddenly, I was doing, soup to nuts. So, it was a shift in practice focus. So it was a, entirely new practice area for me in terms of the insurance. The tort stuff was familiar. We were trying to, enter the sort of cutting edge area of the law and develop a consulting practice around that, which was fascinating and is really kind of right up my alley. And I was really getting, even beyond the legal work, a sense of what it's like to be a real business owner. I mean, as a partner in a law firm that has a platform the size of Squire Patton Boggs, like you're technically an owner, you're being taxed like an owner. But the real ownership value of that, I don't, it's different. Let's just say. So, it was a huge shift. It was a really good shift for me at the time for professional and personal reasons. You guys know, because you both have kids, like 2 years can make a huge difference in your kids' lives and sort of how comfortable you feel leaving them and that kind of stuff. And it was right in the middle of COVID. So being able to shift away from the big law practice that did have me on the road, as Meghan said, for, I think we were gone 28 days in a row. And then we had to go back for, a couple weeks in that trial. Shifting to something different was really good for me to be able to be home and also to kind of stretch my boundaries. Like I said, like if you're not taking risks, then you're not growing. So I was able to do that, and that was awesome. But then after a period of time, sitting here on my back porch, day in and day out, and being in that small law environment, I started to feel a little stagnant. I started to feel like, I'm it's not that there wasn't room to grow in that role. There certainly was, but I was craving something different. And so, but I had the luxury of not being in a position where I had to find something immediately. So I was looking sort of passively over a period of time, and I saw this posting on LinkedIn for this job at Peloton, and I was immediately like, I want that job. That job, the job description just fits so many criteria, which maybe now we could get, we won't, but we could go in a direction where we talk about why don't women apply for jobs that unless they're like 100% qualified for them. But this was like the unicorn job where I was like, okay, I can check
You're qualified for every, yeah.
But I mean, really, nearly all of them, I was able to say, yeah, I can do that, and plus, it's a company that does something that is so easy to get behind, right? So, so I submitted my application, and it was a it was an intense and long interview process, but I'm so glad I did it. I think I mentioned to you both, like, I'm challenged every day, and that really has sort of reinvigorated me in my practice.
And how long have you been there now, Stephanie?
Since November of 2023. So I was at a year and a half, roughly, almost. And yeah, I mean, my team touches all sorts of different types of litigation, subject matters, investigations, and then lots of risk mitigation. So there is still a business aspect of it. And I get to work with extremely talented outside counsel and extremely talented in-house counsel across functions, and then all sorts of really, really cool business people. Yeah, so that's the path. I don't know if I directly answered your question, Katy, but
No, yeah, I mean, just hearing the journey is what's important. And, what advice would you have for that professional that's going to listen, that's just sitting on the fence and too scared to make that leap, right? Because it's easy to be comfortable and just scared. Like, would you have any advice? Just either say do it or don't do it, or how do you do it?
Well, I think all lawyers are a little risk adverse, if not a lot.
Understatement.
What's that? Understatement, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I actually learned that in law school. They're like, you all are risk averse. So, I mean, I'm also, like, as much as I've been talking about taking risks, like, I'm a proponent of thoughtful risks, right? Like, I can imagine a situation where, I could be like, yeah, you should just quit today, right? But I think probably the person sitting there has a little bit more, more ability to kind of weigh things and judge things. But, I will say over the course of my career, and I think this is maybe just a life lesson. I mentioned this to you guys before, but I wish I'd given myself a little bit more freedom and flexibility to take risks earlier on. Not that this isn't a regrets thing. Like, I don't wish I had left Squire earlier than I did. But even when I was thinking about where to go to start my practice after law school, I interviewed in Chicago. I had interviews in other cities that I had lined up, and I kind of went, oh, I think I want to go home to Cleveland. And I just focused my career search on Cleveland law firms. And I had to make a decision for the rest of my life, where I was going to start, where I was going to make partner, and where I was going to die at my desk, right? And that's, in retrospect, that's crazy, right? Like, why didn't I go to Chicago for 4 years? I could have come back to Cleveland, right? Like, why? How many people are at Squire? How many people do you know at other firms who have left and come back? So, there's very few things I think we can do in life that are irreversible. So if it feels right in your gut, which is I actually do think that's probably the right advice. Like, if it feels right in your gut, then what do you really have to lose?
That's great advice. And yeah, I think it's interesting because now, looking back, and I can see that. And, but I've definitely been guilty of that too, trying to plan my whole life. But I do think that now that you have taken, the chance and changed careers, kind of not careers, but changed, shops that you're at twice, you have a really unique perspective, in that you've been at a, bigger law firm, a really small law firm with just two of you, and now in-house. And I'm wondering how, difficult it's been to kind of transition between those. I think you covered some of this when you were talking about the journey that you're on, but if you have advice, or kind of can just provide some idea of the differences between the two that really stand out, or the three types of shops you've been at that really stand out to you.
There's pluses and minuses for everything, right? So, big law firms can be, it can be difficult to find your place in a big law firm. I think that's probably true in a big company too. But, there's a very rigid hierarchy. There's not a lot of transparency around a lot of things. Even when you do ring that bell and you are now a partner, like we were saying, like, what does that really mean? And it's a very diffuse management structure as well. So I remember, coming out of law school and, you've got your friends that are all in their early 20s and everybody's going to do different things. And, everyone says, well, can you ask your boss, blah, blah, right? And you're like, which boss am I going to ask right now? Right. Like I've got 17 bosses. I will say that, learning how to manage different people, managing up to different people, is a skill that, I think as associates in large law firms, you really have to learn that. Otherwise there's no way to succeed. And so those can be really important, good lessons, and good skills, I think, but the resources that you have in a big law firm and the exposure to all the great minds across functions, right? That is one thing I really missed when I had my own firm and we were a litigation boutique. And I couldn't turn to somebody and say, what are the tax implications of this, right? And, or I had to go out and phone a friend, essentially, and I couldn't just walk down the hall. Like I said, having to do everything from soup to nuts, great. That's great that I did that and that I was able to do that. And I proved to myself I could do that. Keep the trains on the tracks and the lights on. But, I'm a terrible marketer. I didn't go to school for that. I'm not an accountant, but in a law firm, you have all those resources. Somebody can book your flight, just like to that simple level. So, there's definitely pros and cons to all environments. And then in-house life is my substantive skills are still useful, obviously. I mean, it's how I got the job. But just, learning how to translate complex legal issues to the business is different than having conversations with other lawyers, right? Like when I have conversations with outside counsel, which are the same conversations I had on the other side, when I was at a law firm, you talk about things, you throw words around and you just assume understanding, right? When you talk to the business, you really have to distill it down. Like, I started talking about mediation, arbitration, something along those lines in a meeting I remember. And somebody was like, hold on, back up. What are those things, right? And how does that differ from... So we assume things when you're in around other lawyers or in that environment. But it's all good. I mean, it's all learning, right? It's all building skills, which even hopefully mid-career, right? I'm mid-career. It's all still about growing and developing, and being able to offer more value.
Nice. And I'm talking about those conversations you had, being on the other side of them. If you could go back and tell yourself as an associate or even a partner at the firm, something that you wish you knew now that you've had that real in-house perspective, what would it be?
Well, we were talking about this before, but one of my terrible traits is that I leave things to the last minute, and I could justify it all day long about how I'm triaging and, so I'm getting the important stuff done and, it's just how I'm efficient and I can do all the things, but it's also procrastination. And so, I mean, I probably drove a lot of our in-house folks crazy by getting things to them, and it was rarely 11th hour, but probably with not enough time to really review it, without any appreciation for how many balls in-house counsel have to keep in the air, especially if it's a very lean in-house team. And so I do have a much better appreciation for why they asked for things much sooner. I think that's probably the biggest thing, and I'm feeling a little guilt about it, obviously, but but that
totally good to have that perspective. It's easy when you're entrenched in a case to, I think, forget that it's not the only case that in-house counsel is managing, and not by a long shot.
I did fall on the floor when you said that you were a procrastinator, because from my seat, I never would have guessed that. Like,
I'm a club procrastinator. Meghan knows.
Megan, well.
Oh yeah, no, I do try to, it's it's how you build in time to do other things, right? Like, okay, I'm going to allow myself to go do this now. That can wait. But sometimes it doesn't need to wait quite as long. Yeah, I'm sure I could think of a lot better examples, a lot more poignant examples of things I've learned, but I pretty
I think that's helpful, though. I think it is good perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you mentioned before that going in-house is giving you a renewed appreciation for the practice of law. Like, and I always think like that's an element of the risk taking of going and doing something different is you don't know how it's going to change your perspective and change how you practice. So how did going in-house and your position now renew your appreciation in the practice of law?
I mean, I think partly it's, well, as you move up the ranks in a law firm, and then where I was, where we were really hyper focused on sort of a couple of specific areas of law, you move away from that more generalist practice. And I think especially being in like the general litigation team, I see a much wider array of issues, which I think that alone is more interesting to me. You get that more as an associate where, you're still kind of trying to find your specialization. So that I think has been great. And I think being able to mainly contribute to the strategy around things is also something that has really sort of reinvigorated my practice. Not that I wasn't in a strategic position before, obviously, as a partner, that's one of your main roles. But I think maybe to put a finer point on it, it's driving the strategy and then seeing how that adds value to the business, which I don't know that you always get visibility into that sitting outside for a lot of reasons. But, like really getting to know the client from that inside perspective and really seeing where you could make a difference by bringing expertise to the table, that's also that, I feel like I'm really adding value. So that's another reason why I think it's been reinvigorated.
Yeah. I know when I went in-house, right, you always want to stay away from like the legal culture being the office of no. And so to me, that was always like the most exciting and energetic part was how can we get the business lane to yes? And I think it just takes a much different perspective on how you practice and how you advise and that you would do in a law firm just looking at like a complex litigation matter. So I thought that was fun. It's like, no, we want to be the office of yes, not no. So how do we do that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, we say that a lot too. I mean, I think that there was a correction somewhere along the way. A lot of old in-house teams must have been saying no. Yeah, no, we also try to facilitate, in a way that minimizes risk. So, and that involves a lot of creativity and strategic thinking.
Yes. And understanding the business and the people you're working with, like building those cross-functional relationships are so important. You don't really get that opportunity, obviously, it's outside counsel. In-house you do, I think, a lot more. But you touched on it a little bit about, having young children, even when you're going on your partnership journey. And I know this is a thing that parents, especially parents with young children, wrestle a lot with is managing the balance, right, of this very demanding career with being a present parent. And I think you have a really unique perspective on how you manage that. Can you just share your perspective on how you gave your kids the love and attention they needed, but yet we're still able to step in and be present for your career and the remarkable journey that you've had on that?
Yeah, I think, I subscribe very much to the concept that it takes a village. I think that goes back to how I was raised. My mom did stay home with all four of us. But, there were four of us. So she needed all hands on deck sometimes. And, so it was a frequent occurrence that we'd go hang out with my grandmother for a while, or, she'd go on a business trip with my dad. And so two of us would go spend the night at my aunt's house, and two of us would go to another aunt's house. I mean, I come from a huge family. So, and we all lived in relatively close proximity. So that was easy for her. So when it came to, taking care of my own kids, and I have to say, it was never really a decision about, do I stay home or do I go back to work for me. I didn't really wrestle with that personally. I think that I was able to do it because I found good help and I had good support. So for me, that was a nanny who I absolutely trusted with my children. So when I left them, I didn't feel like, okay, I have to worry about them all day. And then, we graduated from a nanny to a series of au pairs, which I think is a great program. My kids really connected with a lot of, with the nanny, and as well as a lot of the young women who came over and shared their culture and shared their time and really became a part of our families. And I think that taught my kids that a lot of people can care about them, that, their circle of love and care can be as broad as we can make it. And none of that took away from how much I cared about them or how much they cared about me. And I think, just the way I'm wired, being able to go and be a professional and do the things that interested me during the day allowed me to also be much more present for them when I was with them. They might disagree. They might tell you they tell me to get off my phone all the time still, but I think building a really strong support network, and that can include a partner, maybe it doesn't include a partner, but it includes proxies for partners in lots of different ways. Like, I can thank a lot of people for enabling me to have my career. And obviously I don't want to take away from anybody else's decisions, but that's what worked for me. So,
yeah. But it's emotionally liberating to hear, right? And see and have that example, because it's okay to rely on your village. I think some new parents that I speak with, or that are just starting that journey, feel so much guilt in that, but you don't have to, right? Like, get that village that you can rely upon and bring around you, and that's okay. And the kids turn out great and happy and love, and an appreciation you gave me when we talked before was just like, let your children experience love from many places, and there's a lot of power in that as well.
Yeah, actually, I think we take it on a lot ourselves, for whatever reason, society. And this is, I don't want to take anything away from the men. I don't know how they feel, but as a woman, I think, oh gosh, like, if I'm not home for my kids, am I depriving them of something? I mean, my dad worked, my mom stayed home with us, and I never once thought, well, my mom definitely loves me more than my dad because he goes to work every day, right? Like, that is not a thought that ever crossed my head. So why would it be any different, right? If I go to work, my kids know that I love them.
Yeah, I think sometimes just hearing it out loud, like, it's okay. Like, you can't do it all.
It is. And then they get to the age my kids are now. They don't want me around. They're like, go, get out of here,
Try to enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, speaking of, you were just talking about, the kind of the challenges that women face versus men, kind of transitioning to a topic that has become quite controversial in recent months, diversity, equity, inclusion. I know Peloton has been at the forefront of those efforts throughout, very publicly throughout the years. And I'm curious what your experience has been there with the diversity and inclusion initiatives, and how, if at all, you're able to incorporate that into your work and what you do.
Yeah, I think you're right. if you look at our website, there's a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement there. We make other commitments to diversity and inclusion. You can see it on the platform. There's, theme rides, theme classes for Black History Month, for Women's History Month. If you go back through the collections, there's usually something along those lines, and I think that's fantastic. When I look at our leadership team, it is very representative, and I think that's a point of pride for me, and I think probably for a lot of other people in the organization. When I interviewed for this role at Peloton, even from the outset, when I was doing my initial investigation into, okay, well, who would I be working with, and what does this company really look like? Like, I landed on the commitment to diversity. And I really took note of the fact that our chief legal officer is a woman who was a big law partner and then moved into an in-house role and is just extremely impressive. And I told her so during one of our interviews. I hope it landed the way I intended it to land, which was really like this. Yeah, it's a put your money where your mouth is kind of thing, right? Like, if you're going to have a commitment to diversity on your website, like, I'd like to see that reflected in the leadership team, and the fact that it was meaningful. Our legal team is also wonderfully diverse. When I started, there was a woman who was acting as like an interim deputy general counsel, and I had a drink with her the week I started, and she said to me, now you're in a position where you can really influence the path for, women who were in a position like you were in a law firm. And, that doesn't always mean directing work to people. But it can mean, if you're working with a team, sending a note to the relationship partner saying, I have to tell you that so-and-so did an amazing job on this, or requesting that somebody be on a team, requesting that, pitches include, representative teams, and that those teams then are the teams that will continue to represent you. So it's not just for purposes of the pitch, right? So I think those are all ways that I see that kind of play out day to day.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. And, really from the law firm side, and I know you know this already, but it really does, things like that coming from the client can just make all the difference and be the push that is needed to get people in the room and to get opportunities. So that's really great to hear, and hopefully it continues.
I hope so. I do believe that diverse viewpoints make a difference, Well,
and lead to better outcomes. And, groupthink is a problem, I think, historically. It's good to have diverse perspectives. And, it's like what you were talking about, how even in a law firm, being able to go and knock on different people's doors and things like that. I just think it's helpful to have different perspectives and fresh eyes on things. So
definitely.
Yeah. And I think if you're ever curious of like, well, why does diversity matter? Like, what does that really mean? And go to the Peloton app. And I know that I do that, right? When it's like, whose vibe do I want to feel today? And if it was all the same type of person, it would absolutely be a totally different experience, and probably one that I wouldn't have stood behind like last decade. I mean, that's diversity in action. But yeah,
that's great. And I like one of the things I think you had said earlier, Stephanie, when we kind of touched on this during prep, was that it wasn't about, giving someone a job who, wasn't as qualified. It was really about evening the playing field and making sure. I can't remember how exactly you phrased it. I don't know if you remember, but you said it so much more eloquently than I am now.
Yeah, our Black at Peloton group had an event a week or so ago, and I can't remember what it was called. It was something about the Black experience at work or something along those lines. And they had a fireside chat with our chief product officer, Nick Caldwell, who was talking about DEI historically And he made the comment, I'm going to paraphrase now. He said it much more eloquently, but he said something along the lines of, DEI was always meant to be a merit-based or to enable a merit-based system, right? It was a response to the fact that historic bias and inherent bias and all these things that we know exist created an unlevel playing field. They created a system where merit wasn't the sole criteria on which we were judging. So to turn DEI on its head, right, essentially, and say, oh, this is, creating something other than a merit-based system sort of ignores that.
Yeah, I love that.
Pretty well-known, history of it. So I was really struck by that. So I hope that, the pushback is just sort of temporary or window dressing or whatever you want to call it. And, the reality is we all, I think we all know that, the reality is that some people historically haven't been given a fair and equal chance. And, nobody's saying you have to, put people in positions where they don't belong, but people should be given a fair and equal chance.
Yeah, about the opportunity. I think that's great. Well, thanks for offering those insights. It's really, and that was just, that's definitely going to stick with me. So thanks.
Yeah. Well, thanks to Nick.
Yeah. Thank you, Nick.
I do think it's important for the crowd to know that you are a Notre Dame alum and, highlight the incredible season that they have had this past year and how, what did that mean to you? To see them back at the top?
Yeah. Well, I'm also a proud Georgetown alum, so I don't want to leave anybody out here, but, but yeah, Notre Dame definitely has a stronger football program than Georgetown. And I mean, I'll be honest, football is one of the things, especially with the kids being the age that they are right now. There's a lot of running around on Saturdays. So I kind of came to the season late. I'm not a Weather fan, but I came to the season late, and I mean, it was an exciting end of the season. Talk about grit. You look at the Notre Dame quarterback, and just you're like, how is he able to do what he's doing, carrying the ball? He was unstoppable on a lot of those plays, and that's so fun to watch. It really is. My husband is not a Notre Dame grad, but he's sort of he also went to a school that didn't have a strong football program, so he's definitely he wears the fleece with the Notre Dame logo proudly, and so he joined me to watch. We actually had a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, I turned into a Notre Dame fan this year, and the coach was remarkable. And it's good coaching. It's really inspiring, I think.
Yeah, she was coach of the year, right? So, and a real stand-up person. That the Notre Dame club, the law school alumni club in New York, had an event 2 years ago, I want to say, where the law school dean and the coach of the football team, both named Marcus, came, and I can't remember, it was something clever around them having the same name, but came and spoke, and both so impressive, really, really, he seems like a really good person too, on top of being a great football coach.
Yeah. And a proud dad. Is it 5 kids? So it was really cool to see little kids. I have 1, that's enough. But yeah.
It feels like 5, so I can't imagine 4 or your mom's definitely, or let alone 5. So
well, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, Stephanie, for taking the time to be with us today and sharing your journey, which is always inspiring to watch. And yeah, so thank you for your time. Meghan, thank you for being here as well.
Thanks for letting me crash.
Yeah, thank you both. It's been so nice to talk to you both over the past couple of weeks. Yeah, real pleasure. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I hope you have an awesome weekend.
Thank you. You as well.
All right. Bye.